Hey friends, Maryland General Assembly is getting ready to reconvene in 3 short weeks. And once again, the state of Maryland is facing a $1.4 billion structural deficit that we're going to have to deal with in about 3 weeks. And I want to go over this website and this chart that's been floating around on the internet. This news article by Maryland Matters talks about Maryland's 1.4 budget deficit coming up that we're going to have to deal with this year in the Maryland General Assembly. And what I find interesting about this news article, it says the deficit 5 times higher than what was projected in April. Blame on federal economic policies. And it goes and even has this one paragraph in there. The whole thing is concerning, losing up to $1.5 billion in revenue based on negative actions of the federal government. It's pretty concerning that the Trump administration, only been in office for 10 months. What I find interesting about this chart in this article, it blames everything on Donald Trump. I want you to look at this one piece of data here. 2030, it shows that Maryland is in a $4 billion deficit by 2030. Now, this same news organization, Maryland Matters, did a news story last year before Donald Trump was ever sworn into office. It was only 7 days after the last year 24 election, talking about Maryland's budget deficit. And in that news story, it included a chart that looks eerily similar to today's chart. And at 2030, it shows almost a $6 billion deficit. Let me see this one again. This is from this year, 2030, $4 billion. And this is from last year's chart, 2030, $6 billion. The difference between last year's chart and this year's chart is the $2 billion of tax increases Annapolis and Democrats have imposed on Marylanders. So once again, Maryland doesn't have a revenue problem. Maryland has a spending problem. And it wasn't Donald Trump that passed an Education Reform Act in Maryland that made the schools perform worse and that we can't afford. It wasn't Donald Trump that expanded Medicaid in the state of Maryland to include 60,000 lawfully present non-citizens. And it wasn't Donald Trump that passed the Climate Solution Act, which 4 years ago, Annapolis Democrats said it was the most ambitious climate solutions act across the entire country, but has led to skyrocketing utility bills in our own state. Donald Trump didn't do any of that. That was the Annapolis Democrats that did that. So as we head towards the legislative session, and it's also an election year next year, I got to think the blame game and the gaslighting is going to get much, much worse. So I'm here to try to set the record straight, at least get out the conservative point of view on some of these controversial issues. I want to remind constituents and people that follow my page that I put out a free email newsletter that kind of sets the record straight and gives you my perspective on things. So please sign up for it. If you like this video, click the like button, smash the share button, and I will talk to you soon.